Gosar was running against 8 other people back in 2010 when a lot of us started getting active and the Tea Party just started getting going in 2009, and we were making trips to Sholo and Flagstaff and going all over to hear all of our candidates. So, winner, winner, chicken dinner. Here's Paul Gosar. He's won the last number of elections.
Thank you. Isn't it great to be in the United States right now?
Yeah.
Isn't it great to have a president that likes to fight?
Yes.
Yeah. Isn't it great to be one of the deplorables?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Those are the building blocks, and that's why this president's coming to see us. You know, this guy gets down in the trenches. When you look at what he's been thrown at, unbelievable. Fake impeachment proceedings. And what does he do with immigration? He passes trade bill after trade bill after trade bill that actually reduces illegal immigration on his own.
Paul, you want to hold that
Okay.
a little bit more, please? Thank you.
Okay. So he passes trade bills that actually, with agreements with Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras on his own
Yes.
to get things done to slow that immigrant crisis. In fact, that's where I was yesterday. So Andy Biggs and I entertained 3 other members of Congress, one from Wisconsin, one from Arkansas, and the other one from Idaho. And we got to go firsthand. The Border Service took us on a patrol with their helicopters, seeing the whole border wall and the problems. And then we finished up in the Tohono O'odham Nation that actually has a big hole. And you see a big funnel. That's where they come through. A lot of the drugs, a lot of the individuals, trafficking individuals, that's where they come through. So it's interesting what they've been doing. And we need more men and women in Border Patrol, and we need to secure this country. So, but look at what's happening here. We got more jobs than we actually have people.
Yes. Yeah. Woohoo.
Last time I looked this morning, or yesterday, President Obama was taking credit for that. You know, he never went over 2% growth rate, and he said it was never going to come back with manufacturing and growth over 3%, and guess what?
Yeah.
Here we are. And it's going to keep on going.
Yeah.
The other thing that most people are not paying attention to is the rules and regulatory state. It's changing. They're being streamlined. And this has been fun because I've been part of this. So I surely said I'm chairman of the Western Caucus. And when I took the reins 4 years ago, it was a sleepy little caucus. It really didn't do much. They had about 35 members. So when I was elected, my idea was to have direct conversations with the secretaries and administrators of the different agencies. So why would I do that? Well, remember what happened to us in Lake Havasu a couple years back, where the Fish and Wildlife Services illegally closed down part of the lake? That's what got my attention. It was that senior executive service level that was impugning, stopping things coming from the bottom up and things from the top down. So what we did is we started having conversations. So the first time we had Secretary Zaki at the time come to see us, he had 2 staffers. Second time he saw us, he had 6. Third time he had 10. So here's why he had to bring so many staffers. As members of Congress were going directly to the secretaries and talking about the rules and regulatory state that were impugning the American public. We want to be fair, but we want to be right about it. And so what we were doing is having direct relationships with them, and they were getting the credit for reducing the rules and regulatory state. So to give you an example, waters of the U.S., the overreaching of the Obama administration into every water, pond unknown to man was rescinded.
Yes.
A lot of thought due to what the Western Caucus did in working with the Secretary of Interior and working with EPA. And it's key to know those things. Okay? So now this little caucus has ballooned up to almost 80 members, and it's become a force on the Hill.
Good.
So we're not the majority in the House. We're the minority. And yet, we're getting stuff done right and left. That's good news. So I also got to tell you about something fun that happened to me. So the chairman of the Rules Committee, Jim McGovern, sees me and grabs me in the hall and he goes, "I didn't believe what you've done." I said, what are you talking about? He goes, "Well, we we put out a case in looking at who's getting the most legislation. Amendments passed through committee, amendments passed through on the Rules Committee for the floor, and you're that guy. So isn't it interesting that one of the most conservative members of Congress is one of the most accomplished members of Congress? Isn't it interesting that all those things are bipartisan? Isn't that interesting? You don't have to sell your soul to get something done. Now, there's a lot more that has to get done, but it's not. The Ice Queen is not going to let anything move. That's what I call it. Pelosi. Yeah. She's the Ice Queen. And then we got the four horsewomen, the true people behind the scenes. But I mean, think about it. What do they got to run on? None of it. None of it. They hate it. Yeah, this is true. All they do is they hate Donald Trump more than they love this country. And during the impeachment proceedings, did you guys recognize the Constitution they were talking about? This is the same Constitution that they claimed were a bunch of racist old white guys put together. That's their words, not mine. It's sad that we've reached that state. We've seen him weather everything. Vibrant economy, trade deals, and he's not done. I suspect what you're going to see is a trade deal with the UK fairly quickly, and then it's going to put a lot of onus on the European Union. This is going to be fun. Now the other thing is it's going to be very interesting to see what happens because of this coronavirus. It's really hampering trade from China. So this is an opportunity for America to shine. Our manufacturing, our services, all those things we can build on. And it's not exclusively to the big cities now. We're seeing rural Arizona abound. Give you an example. Look over at Prescott. It's going to turn into an aviation hub center and a cybersecurity. They procured a manufacturing deal for the first battery-flown plane from Israel. Isn't that interesting? Yes. Yeah. It looks like the USGS, or the Department of Agriculture, is going to center their firefighting out of that same area, out of Prescott. Centrally located, can get to everywhere, and they got a whole bunch of pilots in the making, Embry-Riddle. So then you got manufacturing up in Kingman. You got Dot Foods that's moved into Bullhead City. So things are really starting to hop, and it's high time that the rural entities actually get involved in this. So we're seeing more people come and visit because they got money in their pockets. That's how people are. When they have money in their pockets, they get a chance to buy cars, buy houses, get their kids in school and the schools that they want. They come out and visit the great places that Arizona is great for, from Prescott to Kingman to Payson, all the way down to Yuma. And if you don't believe me, go look at all the Canadians down in Yuma. There's a healthcare that really works. No pun intended. So it's going to be an interesting ride. I think there's some storm clouds on the horizon. And I hope they're solved, because we have to have equal application of the law. We've seen a divided law for quite some time. I was a little bit disturbed when I saw that the Justice Department would pass on Mr. McCabe. However, I think where they're going was reiterated yesterday and today, where you saw a number of people in the Justice Department resign. You had a number of court judges write a letter of being appalled at his Barr's and Trump's conduct. But what it showed me is that the state of affairs in the Department of Justice is filled with career people blocking. So the only thing I think that we can think of is that the only way they're going to get to the bottom of this is holding people through the criminal aspect of Mr. Durham. I certainly hope that's the case. I certainly hope that's the case. Because it's been very, very unfair. When you look at what Michael Flynn has had to endure, everybody associated with Trump has endured this fanaticism. And yet, on the other side, Where's justice to Clapper and Brennan?
Yeah.
Where's the justice to Comey and McCabe and Strzok and Page?
Yeah.
It goes over and over and over and over again. But remember what this whole gamut is about. It's covering for the previous administrations. Because they built the weaponization of this government against the people. You think about Fast and Furious, you think about Benghazi, you think about IRS, you think about the attacks on the press, you think about the unmasking. And the American public is just starting to find out about this unmasking. Over 3 million Americans were unmasked by the previous administration. I'm sure I was one of them. But that goes to the real core of what this country was about privacy. And the warrant process. You're innocent until proven guilty. We got to get that back to that justice.
Yeah.
So I love the effect that this president has. He takes no prisoners, and he fights. He fights for all he's worth. Now, I've got some people that come to me and say, we don't really care for the president's demeanor. Well, you know what? No one likes a disruptor. The American public knew something was wrong in Washington, D.C. It's broken. We're not even going to have a budget this year. They're just going to plug in numbers from the previous budget. That's how sad this is. So when I go around talking to everybody, they're like, well, what's the number going to be in this part of education? Can't tell you. The Cardinals haven't established that. So, but with some other good news. Being a member of the Freedom Caucus and on the board, the president has taken us in confidence. So since the last was here, we've been up at the White House numerous times. And the time I want to tell you a little bit about was in November. And he's human. He's human. It builds up on him. And so he brought all the Freedom Caucus in. There was over 40 of us in there. And he vented on us for an hour. And his comment is, I'm sorry, I don't know who else to vent on. You guys have been there through thick and thin. And he vented. At the end of the hour, he goes, hey, who's in the way? Who's been part of the problem? So he listened. Somebody on the other side of the table talked about somebody, and he talked back with them. I raised my hand and said, with all due respect, Mr. President, you're the head of the FBI. Christopher Wray's got to go.
Yeah.
And it was nice, his comment. Well, Paul, you got a lot of credibility with me. You're the guy that called Paul Ryan out from the very get-go. You were so right. Who agrees with Paul? Everybody else raised their hand. And he goes, start getting his name out. And the president has been very upset with Mr. Wray. So this is a gentleman that understands where he's going to go. He gets rid of the people that are in the way. It's been tough for him to find all those people. But look what he did with Vindeman and Sonneman. So, which ends with the following comment. You have no idea what opportunity you have right now. Imagine for a second. Imagine just for 1 second that we have the president reelected, we retake the House, and retake the Senate. Imagine what is possible here.
Yeah.
Now, what you're going to hear from me and from my colleagues in the Freedom Caucus is process, 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 process. That's where we've gone wrong. You're seeing it, ironically, with Ms. Pelosi. All these bills are not going through committee. They're going right from the Speaker's desk right to the floor. That's no process. We got to get back to that. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. If you've got an amendment to a bill, you ought to be able to put it down. The committees ought to work. The committees ought to elect who their chair is. And remember that the Speaker works for the members at large, the 435, not the other way around. And we work for you. If we get that back, it's amazing what can fall. Amazing. Amazing. Imagine this. Let's just take the court system. Did any of you really realize that when Donald Trump was elected, there were 9 openings on the 9th Circus? Think about that. If we understood where we were going, we would immediately put 9 conservative justices on that bench. and immediately had the conversation about breaking up the Ninth Circuit because of the 3 times the backlog of any other court that's been divided in U.S. history. Think about all the ineptitude that Trump had to face with injunctions from that group. And by the way, I want the 12th district. I'm happy to take 4 of those liberal justices just so that we get 2 conservative benches in the 9th and 12th. So I don't think we give parlay to the Senate. It's been nice to the justice they've been put on, but you can walk and chew gum at the same time. It would be nice if the Senate led the discussion by actually putting some of these bills that would actually get us talking about health care on the floor. Bring them from the Senate before they come to the House. Because the House is not doing any of that. These are the things that take down the rhetoric. You stand for this, you stand for that. No, you don't. No, you don't. Well, break everybody down to the lowest common denominator. What's Paul talking about? It's that same old adage. You got to break everybody down to the lowest common denominator. Make the diagnosis. The first thing you got to do with healthcare is you got to break up the insurance monopoly. There's no incentive for them to compete. None. They know everything about you and they share it all with them. Once upon a time, they needed to, for their industry to have that antitrust exemption. They don't need it anymore. And think about that. With just that one move, the 3 groups that benefited under Obamacare, big hospitals, insurance and pharmacies, or pharmaceuticals, all have to get broken down. I said over and over again, we don't know what we want. We don't know what's even possible. What I do know is Medicare for all is not possible. I mean, think about it. How many of you are under Medicare? How many of you are having problems finding a physician? Yeah. There's trouble, folks. It's insolvent by 2025. So why would you want to expand that? Are we better than that? We deserve something much better. So the 2 things you could do is break up the insurance monopoly. That's what Karen Ferguson repealed. That's been my baby before I came to Congress. It's high time. Put them on the table working for you, not for the federal government. Number 2 is about HSA reform, health savings accounts reform. So that you're empowered with your own money. And how are we getting it done? We're doing it through our veterans. Here's the thought. Some veterans get HSAs, some do not. What's the difference? If we're really tailoring this to the veteran, shouldn't we allow them to make the choice? And the best way is, even if part of their benefit is part money that goes into their HSA, where they decide to spend the dollars, the government must go. That gives you true flexibility and accountability. Allows you to go to the doctor of your choice. You do those 2 things, and it's amazing what can come about. I've done the homework. I sat down with those actuarials and underwriters. And to play with the numbers, first 100 in, first 500 in, what if you did this? What about this pre-existing condition? Good practices. There's lots of opportunities here. That's why that meeting went from 1.5 hours to 4.5 hours. Poor Penny had to endure it. But imagine solutions like this from a guy who's impatient that doesn't stand for in one place too long. That's a gift this president brings to the table. He wants to do it right, but he's not tempered by saying, well, we'll do it a different day. We'll do it a different way. Nope, that's not what we're doing. This is where we're going. This is what I promised you. Here's what I'm going to deliver. How many politicians have actually done what they promised? Yeah, well, there was another guy. And you're looking at him.
Yeah.
All the promises I told you, I kept my promises. But I'm a dentist impersonating a politician, too. It shouldn't be about pulling teeth, but I'm happy to pull teeth on bureaucrats. And I have. So, from that standpoint, what I thought I'd do is leave it at that and entertain your questions. What do you want to know? What do you want to hear from the background? And let's just go that way, have a conversation. How about right here?
What do we have to do to get rid of Pelosi?
How do we get rid of Pelosi?
Okay, wait a minute, because we have these mics,
Yeah.
and you notice you have to talk into the top of the mic. And I'm gonna give this one, yeah, you wanna do it? Sure. And we alternate sides of the room, okay? So Michael's gonna do this side of the room, I'm gonna come down here. And the first person is, who was it?
Right there. Very end.
Irv, okay. Here we go, Irv.
All I ask is, what do we have to do to eliminate Pelosi?
It means you vote Republican, 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 Republican.
Thank you.
And I will tell you what's at stake here. Even if the numbers are what we think they are, the House is not going to change. We won't have the majority by much. That's what's at stake here. That's why what happens in Nevada is very important. There's 2 seats available there. There's 2 to 3 seats available in Arizona. 1, 2, and 3. Yes, I said it. Grijalva, I think there's a great possibility.
Yeah, that would be.
You know that a Republican running in that district starts with 40% of the vote with no money. So opportunities are endless. And he's forever tied now with the galloping 4 horsewomen. He's tied with Pelosi. There's nothing worse. You can't beat that baggage.
Okay, over here we have,
Yeah. Can you explain why Trump can't just fire everyone and make them reapply for their job?
Well, there's the Federal Employment Act, which is tough. You know, going back to that Lake Havasu deal I was talking to you about, I couldn't get that gentleman fired. I got him reassigned. But I got him reassigned to a job he hated. And I'm not done with him. When I'm done with him, he'll be in a deserted island in the South Pacific, surrounded by sharks, counting shark teeth. So let's just go back. What was the first executive order of Donald Trump? Anybody know?
There's been some.
Moratorium on hiring for federal workers. So what's happened is he's put a lot of onus when people retire, they're not replacing them. So he's figured this out. Now here's his problem. He's had to get rid of a lot of people because there were people, he came in blind. So the establishment on both sides was there ready to give their names because they wanted to mitigate. That's why I saw people come and go. He demands excellence. And that's why you see him shuffle a lot of different people in and out. So I think he's pretty happy with some of the people he's got in now in the White House. And I think once DOJ comes around, I think the report from Durham will be everything that we can expect. We'll see. If it is, voila, here we go.
I'm sorry, Penny asked me to interrupt you.
Okay.
Well, so Wes, raise your hand.
There's
So
Wes.
Wes is right here. Wes has some notebooks that he's been collecting for the last year that have letters of support handwritten for President Trump. And we're going to try, the Congressman's office is going to try and get those to the President. But he wants to see if there's anyone here that will sign it before we try and meet up with them this next couple of days.
Right up,
Just
right
let
up.
them go around your
They can
table.
go around if you want to write something.
sign
Write
it?
what you want.
And
Just
then-
put one on each side.
All right.
Anybody on this side want to write something? Okay, way in the back here. And then, pass it up.
Okay, we're back to questions on this side. We'll take the lady in the red here.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Who are the members of the Western Caucus and what are your duties and responsibilities?
Okay, good, good. So we're not all Western Caucus people, because what I've learned is sometimes it's the member who introduces a bill, sometimes it's a different person. So if it's my idea, sometimes it's beneficial for me to move that, sometimes it's not. So what we did is, if you look at legislation, if you take the Mississippi, for example, you look at the votes, count votes east of the Mississippi, they have by far more votes than we do. So the only way we can win in the day is teach them. Take the opportunity and teach them what's special about the West. So we have people from New York, Florida, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, they're all on Western Caucus. And what we do is we we actually, it was prohibited from travel, what they call codels, where you see members go over to Israel or Africa or Middle East. Well, we were prohibited from doing that in the United States because they thought that there was lots of kickbacks going on. So my staff took my idea, they went to the administration, they went to the ethics department, and we were okayed for travel. So one of the first places we traveled to was Alaska. So when you want to see timber, you want to see mining, you want to see Anwar, see fishing, you see animals, everything that was told those people was false. When you start from Fairbanks at 64 degrees and when you're on the north slope where Anwar is, it's 28 and it's a blizzard. And it's August 4th. You get it. You get it. So my idea is that we learn better by seeing, touching, and feeling it. Everybody does. Okay? And when you have to be put in that circumstance, you never forget it. It's imprinted. That's why we've also expanded it to senior staff folks as well. And these people put up $5,000 a year to belong to that group. Once a month, we meet with the secretary or administrator of the different agencies, and candidly, they get about 10 minutes to speak, and then they're barraged with questions and rules, regulatory states. It's been phenomenal. The hardest person to get was Secretary Perry. And when he came, he was blasted. He was like, I've never seen a group that's this acute on the rules and regulations. And they're driven. So my whole take was to build this group and use the benefits of each person. Each person in that group's got some gift, and be able to find that. And the reason I came up with this is that I had a number of members come up to me and say, listen, Paul, how are you getting all of your legislation done? And leadership hates you. And that was the key, is that we figured out how to hit the system. You hit it over and over and over again with good legislation. You get somebody on the other side. It makes it very tough for them to say no. And so what we've been doing is, before that, I was actually mentoring several other offices. So that's who belongs. There are a lot of Western folks. We will be going to Washington State in May. That's going to be the big excursion. Dan Newhouse is the host, and what he's doing is talking to us about all the water, the big dams that they're trying to tear down. And by the way, it's now coming to Arizona. They're proposing tearing down Hoover and Marble Canyon. So it's here. Oh, it's here. So we might as well get this on. Okay? We deal with water. So we teach people about indigenous peoples, water policy. We look at manufacturing. We look at energy. So it's really cool. I mean, so for another example on energy, we took a short weekend and went to Houston, Texas. And in this coal-fired plant, they have captured all anything coming off the stack. They pipe it into the oil fields that have already been fracked, and they force it in the ground. And what it does is like a squeegee effect. It pushes all the rest of the oil that hasn't come out, and it condenses into limestone. Isn't that interesting? Total sequestration of the whole process. So most people don't understand that. But when you get to see it, it makes an impact. And the last time I looked, this country has a renaissance of affordable energy. We're now producing it and sending it over around the world. And if you want to bring up climate change, we want to address that. But I don't know if you saw the statistics today. The United States, not part of the Paris Climate Accord, led the world in reductions of greenhouse gases by percentage. No one's even close. No one's even close. And I'll make that point to you. Then we ought to be exporting our mineral wealth, our oil and gas around the world. And think about this. One of the cool parts about this job is you get to see everybody's secret sauce. And there's a gentleman there are 3 chemists. And when you extract oil out of seeds, they were perturbed that you have to use an acetone or an acetate. And once you extract the oil, you have to throw it away. You have to incinerate it. You can't use it for feed of horses, cows, pigs, whatever. Well, these folks have figured it out. It's all using propane. They grind it up, they have these little propane emitters. It attaches onto this certain type of oil, it's a real sweet crude, and it extracts it from the seed. 99.999 recovery. Guess what? They can produce this all around the world. Our sweet crude that no one has been able to get like this out of these oil sands, they can do for under $18 a barrel. Oh, and by the way, it's as it's refined with this propane, it's now eligible to meet the standards for seagoing vessels for 2021 for sulfur emissions because it's low. Imagine that. The miracle of technology. Miracle of technology. Good.
Okay.
We're right here and then over to there.
No, we're Bill first and then we're over there. Sorry about that.
Nice to see
We
you.
alternate.
Yes, we did. I went from the lady to the.
Nice to see you again, Congressman.
Good to see you, Bill. Thank you.
I have been using the VA clinic in Payson since I moved here in 2001, and it's a wonderful organization. They're great. My last meeting was November 7th of 2019. I received a card in the mail a few days ahead of time reminding me of my appointment, the date, the time, which is very nice, and accompanying it a map showing me the location of the former VA clinic, which was no longer, not been there for 7 years, and a nice verbal address telling me how to get to that place from either the east or the north or the south. Can't come from the west, there's mountain range there. And it's wonderful, but it's all to the wrong place.
Yeah.
And we've been telling them, this is done in Phoenix, we've been telling them about this at least for the 7 years since they moved. And I said, who do I know besides Paul Gosar and Penny Pugh who can make a correction on that scale? And I bet those folks with the VA in Washington know who you are, don't they?
Oh, yeah. This
Yeah. So this is for you.
Okay.
Got my name and address on there. and-
No, I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for coming again.
Oh, my pleasure.
Congressman, on this side, please.
Thank you for coming, Congressman.
Oh, my pleasure.
You know, the veterans nationally,
Closer to your mouth.
Just,
the veterans nationally know you as our George Patton. Now, I'm gonna change streams here a little bit. I have a lifelong friend that I made a 5.5-hour movie about his life recently. His name is Peter McDonald,
Yep.
who knows you well.
yes.
He's one of 3 left code talkers. He really needs some help on a code talkers museum up there. And anything that you can do for the Navajos up there on the code talkers. They don't care about blacktop
Yeah.
roads and all that.
No, I agree.
If somebody go in there and see him, it'd be really appreciated.
We are, there's some conversations already ongoing. So, the problem with bureaucracies, they're extremely slow.
One other thing, I got him his first VA card after 50 years, 2 years ago.
Oh, well, Peter's a real character, so tell him hi for me. Can he go down to Veterans Stadium tomorrow? Does he know Trump's coming down?
Yeah, but he can't.
He can't get it, okay.
His daughter tries to. He'll come down here to the Lincoln Theater.
Okay, good. Where are we at now? Oh,
Right.
cameraman.
Good evening, Paul. Thanks for coming tonight.
My
My
pleasure.
name's Don Klein, and I was wondering if you've read the article in Tyson Roundup today about your complaints about SB 1625, and how Peter Ellishaw completely switched it around and turned it into a mini piece
On the gun bill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote him a letter about it.
Well, folks, you know, I was in state when Mojave County went for sanctuary city. I was very poignant. If you don't have a second, you don't have a first, you don't have a fourth, you don't have a fifth, you don't have a 10th.
Yeah.
So red flag rules are a no-go. And the argument I use, I will use myself. So look at the red flag rules and know something about my family. So what would stop those Democrats by saying, you know, Paul's unhinged, he's a conservative. They've already said it. Okay? So they have jurisdiction over me because they don't like my politics?
No.
That's dangerous, folks. That's extremely dangerous. And and put somebody in mental competency on trial, how do you know? Oh, I could write another question. So is it when somebody has their medication or is it without? Can you disrupt it? How long? When are they stable? When are they not? If you pay any attention to psychiatric medicine, it's hardly something that you can stand on one toe and say, this is solid. It's evolving over time. But what ends up happening is, it's one person or the group that are taking you on, that's wrong. That's why when Yavapai County tried to water it down, I was voting back in DC, so Miss Penny gave us her comment saying, listen, we don't like what you put down. You can't water it down. You're either in or out. And they pulled it off the table and passed the way it should be. Now we're seeing Pinal County go that way. I love it. The fact that you're for something, not against something. Individual liberty and freedom. That's what's established by the Second Amendment. That ensures independence, freedom, and liberty. So I don't know what he put down there, but folks, I have been the staunchest person. In fact, let me regress. So remember when, is it 2017, Tom? The Fix Nix?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so all of a sudden, leadership concocted this crazy idea. And they took Fix Nix, which was supposed to be the background fix check, and they coerced the NRA to do conceal and carry and bundle them. Okay? And the way they did that was with a rule. Okay? And so what they conned everybody to say was, what we're going to do is we'll pass this rule, we'll join these two bills together, send it over to the Senate, and like some charge, you're going to get conceal and carry. I kept saying, no, the Senate doesn't have to take the House's rules. They're going to divide it. In fact, Senator Murphy, who's also in the news again today, I've been talking to the Iranian folks on the side, kept telling us, we're not taking the conceal and carry reciprocity. So what did I do? Tom's in my office. I'm in my office after hours. Thomas Massey from Kentucky is there, the Second Amendment chair. We called the NRA and said, hey, listen, this is what's happened. You're getting stood up. And they said, well, we made the deal. You know, we'll have to see how it goes. And I said, okay. So have you ever scored a rule vote? Okay, and what I mean by that is they have to push a rule. Or what they do is they push a rule that allows those parameters on that bill. I said, have you ever scored a rule vote? Nope. I said, okay. Thank you. Very next day, the NRA scored the rule vote against all of the folks who are vibrant, fanatical Second Amendment folks. That's the little blemish on my record, is that little thing there. But I wasn't conceding the Fix Nix at all. Think about this. You got a ham. You keep cutting that ham. No matter how thin you cut that ham, you eventually run out of ham, don't you? That's exactly what they're doing with the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
We're talking about this wrong. So I'm the guy that's been following up by saying, listen, we ought to be talking about success. Yes, there's 30-some thousand people that lose their life to a gun. Sometimes it's self-inflicted. Sometimes it's in an assault. But what about the 800,000 to 2.4 million people that are empowered and stave off an egregious action to them because they have a gun? And guess what? Most of them are women, older people, and children. That sounds like a whole lot of success to me. When you look at these big shootings, look at the one in Florida. This is a problem for government. You had Barack Obama that said, put out this decree saying, listen, under the age 18 shouldn't be incarcerated with known criminals. How many times did they have a strike against them that they should have been brought in? 18 different times. Accountability comes with something. But I guess being some of these young kids, I get it. I watch Hillary Clinton, I watch Barack Obama, I watch Eric Holder, I watch Peter Strzok and all these people actually violate the law, and are not held to the same standard. They get a pass. So I get what they're getting. They're getting bad advice. But I can tell you right now, they will have to take my gun from my dead hands, ripping it from my dead hands.
We have a question over here, over there, and then we have one here, and one here, and one here, and over there.
Go ahead.
What?
Okay, my topic has to do with Social Security.
Yep.
And how the tax code taxes Social Security benefits.
Yeah.
I volunteer to do taxes. And every day seniors come in with some Social Security benefits and perhaps a pension. And they are shocked to find out that some portion of their Social Security is being taxed.
Yep.
Now, try to explain that to somebody. The calculations are probably 15 operations of math. More so, that was put in about 40 years ago, and 40 years ago, the thresholds to calculate it have not been changed once to account for inflation or anything.
Exactly right.
Tax reform 2 is coming this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get this Social Security thing simplified?
I think it's already on the president's radar screen. You know, I can tell you, having sat down with Mick Mulvaney and their lead staff, 2.0 will be I think they're going to introduce it over the summer. It won't pass, folks. The House will never pass anything. But what he's running on is a doctrine. He's putting out what he believes, what he thinks, and he wants you to tell him what you think about it. Running on a mandate. Isn't that interesting? Listening to the people. That's the same problem that we got with Medicare. When Medicare was established in 1964, when you had a heart attack, we gave you glycerin tablets and that was it. Today, we're going to put you on a table, we're going to crack open your chest, we may even go through your femoral artery in your leg, we're going to put new valves in, we may give you a whole another heart, and the medications that go with it. Never took that into consideration. But that's one of the reasons why we have to have healthcare reform. We have to make it patient-focused, patient-friendly, patient-centered. And we can't have people like Mike Bloomberg, who made the comment that if you're old, you should just go and die.
He's old, why doesn't he do it?
That's exactly right. So, but that's why we have to have, Social Security is a fixable process. It is fixable. You bring up one of the ideas that's being espoused. It's not the only one, and there's other things that have to happen with it. But the real problem that we got is with Medicare. That's why what I told you about the first thing, the breakup of the insurance monopoly. Right now, they answer to the federal government, not to you. They're offering one plan. So here's the justification on this. For the last 5 years, we've got great data on the religious exemption. Medishare, anybody familiar with that?
Yeah.
Interesting thing happens. 90% of those on Medishare in these religious healthcare aspects pay less than half of what their monthly rate is for Obamacare. 90%. 60% pay less than $500 a month versus Obamacare. Now that tells me there's a 50% inflationary value on healthcare. So why wouldn't we empower doctors? Okay? So in this religious healthcare, they're actually charging adults $40 a month for unlimited visits, a child $10. And they're making money at it, folks. Okay? Then the complaint was, well, you don't have specialty care. All of a sudden, they're offering specialty care, and they're not seeing much of a rise. So once again, I believe in the power of the people and the market, not dictating to the market. Government isn't the answer. Government's the problem. I think Ronald Reagan said that first, and he said it very accurately. Does that answer your question?
Okay, we have Lori here.
My question is, I have 4 kids, and most of them are professional. They 2 lived in urban cities, and I'm shocked. They're very liberal, and that's not the way they were raised. So my question is, how do I talk to them? How do we talk to people that are liberal to know how much they're being brainwashed
and they, you know, my kids all watch NBC News or whatever, and so they're getting brainwashed. And then the other part that I was thinking, I think every candidate running for office needs to educate people what socialism is, because I think a lot of people don't know that. And I think the bottom line is we want Republicans in office, and we want a landslide.
I agree. I will tell you, I think that's a very, very great question. First of all, we ought to call it what it is. It's called communism.
Yes.
Okay? That's easier to understand. And the government gives you only what they will allow you to. There's oligarchs. I mean, we see it with Russia. You know, it's sad that we don't want to have that entrepreneurial, that exception to greatness. That's what America was based off of. But you have to remember, Democrats need victims. Think about this. They're all about victimhood. Oh, poor, pitiful me. The government's got to make me equal. I don't want to be equal. I don't want to be equal to Hillary Clinton. I don't want to be equal to Barack Obama. I want to stand on my own two legs. That's why our framers wanted the public charge. They wanted everybody to be a process and a nuance to themselves, but not a charge on the public. It's antithetical to freedom and liberty. It's so wrong. But here's the problem. We now have to look in the mirror and say, okay, how did they learn this? We lost touch with our education.
Yes.
This is the liberalization of our education is responsible. My mom, this is an ongoing conversation. I'm the first of 10 kids. There are 8 fanatical liberals. So fanatical that they actually did a video for my Democratic colleague, or opponent, last year.
Yeah.
Seriously. Okay, so was I raised differently than them? No, no. Did I go to a less liberal college? No, no. I went to probably more liberal college. I went to Creighton. That's what I tell everybody. Jesuits made me, now you gotta live with me. So what we started doing is the conversation is about what we can agree on. That's the conversation we need to have. Is how do you look, the question should be always answered as a question. Why do you believe in communism or socialism? How is that going to benefit somebody? I think that's the first thing. The second thing is when you talk about healthcare, it gets really out-ranker. It's like, okay, I hear you. Are you sure you know everything about the insurance market and what's possible? Don't you think we ought to break up the big insurance companies? Don't you think we ought to break up the big hospitals, make them compete? And how about the pharmaceuticals? It's hard to argue the facts. So I'll do it quickly. If you invested before Obamacare was implemented in big hospitals, you're 8.5 times wealthier. Invested in the medical insurance industry, you're 15.5 times wealthier. Invested in pharmaceuticals, can't calculate it, it's off the chart. See a pattern? See a pattern? Yeah. But it's touchy because they're angry. They're very angry. I don't know why. I don't live in their mind. But what I can do is I can smile at them because it makes their head pop. I can only meet somebody halfway. If they're not willing to meet with me, I can't do much about that. But I think there's another blessing here. Are you a grandparent?
Yes.
You have a magical opportunity. It's with your grandkids. Being a parent, I can tell you. What you tell your kid goes in one ear and out the other. But magically, I brought my folks and my folks-in-law down at least twice a year and actually had my kids go to see Grandma and Grandpa. I believe in that extended family, that unit. And it's amazing when Grandma tells my son Gaston, this is this, da-da-da-da. And all of a sudden your son comes over and he goes, guess what Grandma told me? It's like magic. It's unbelievable. And instead of reinventing the wheel, just use the wheel that was given us. And you wonder why the Democrats attack the family. You wonder why. You wonder why how this country was established on oath to family. You wonder why we are pro-life. We're not against that infant being murdered on the sidelines. We're all about what our Constitution was, and it's magical. We can only do half the things, but I would tell you, talking to your grandkids is unbelievable. And that's the bloc that is now following Bernie Sanders and the Democrats. And it's really interesting. All of a sudden, they're moving out. They're not living in grandma's or mom and dad's basement. They're getting a job in their profession that they actually went to school for, believe it or not, even though they got big debt. Then you have the conversation. It's hard. Yeah. Why should we forgive your student debt? I didn't. I had 5 jobs when I went through dental school. I worked my tail off. I didn't go to Europe like everybody else did either. You know, and the moment I was done, I ran home and I was put to work in the construction trade. So I think we all individualize it, but my suggestion is find out why they stand for that. Most of them, like AOC, she couldn't tell you the difference between socialism and capitalism. And here's my point to that. She graduated from Boston University with a degree in economics and foreign affairs. And her first thing about Israel was it's Israel occupying Palestinian land. This is the brainiac of the Democratic side. But every time she says something, we ought to be using it as a teaching moment. Does that help? I can't talk to my family.
I still believe. Over there.
Question on this side?
Yeah.
Oh, way back there, okay.
Hi there, my name's Kathy Reed, and I live here in Payson.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a hobby photographer, and I photograph mainly the wild horses in our national forest, primarily the Heber Overguard herd and also the Salt River herd. I've watched the last few years as public policy has changed to the point where we are rounding up more and more of our wild herds off of the public lands. It's happened in all our surrounding states, Utah, Nevada, everywhere in the West. And now it's come to Arizona. 4 days ago, the U.S. Forest Service announced their proposed plan, the draft plan, for the Heber Overguard wild horse herd. And if this plan, as it's written now, should be implemented, it will decimate that herd. They will be gone in a matter of years. They're proposing to take the herd down to a very low number, 50 horses, which I think most of us understand that that would mean they would end up being inbred in a number of years from now. And I believe that's being done because the government holding pens are now 50,000 horses full. And it's costing the taxpayers $500 million a year to implement this plan that's been taking place of rounding up and incarcerating our wild horses to make room on the public lands for more cattle grazing, sheep grazing, and so forth. I'm not opposed to sharing the public lands. I know they're meant for multiple use. I just am asking if there's anything you can do to help us have a more equitable balance, because myself and many other people enjoy the wild horses on the public lands, and we don't want them decimated. We want them to remain for generations to come to enjoy.
So, are you familiar with the Center for Biological Diversity?
Yes, I am.
They filed a lawsuit for that area. So the New Mexico jumping mouse is that subject. It's an indigenous animal. Its whole livelihood is here. Horses are not indigenous to this area. And so now what you're confronting is the same thing I'm confronting every day with the endangered species law. They're antiquated. You have lawsuits after lawsuits that are settled behind closed doors where you don't even know how much the settlement is for. We see these outright attorney's fees that were supposed to be capped at $185 an hour. And now because they claim that it's all specialty law, they're in excess of sometimes $500, $800 to $1,000 an hour. The problem you're finding now is the court's interpretation. Okay? The other thing is the budgetary items. When you look at Utah and Nevada, particularly Utah and Nevada, they're in trouble because the horse herds have gotten so big, they're destroying things. So we got to come to Jesus moment here. Okay? You're about ready to be assaulted by all the other indigenous species. What about the elk? What about the Rocky Mountain mule deer? What about the Rocky Mountain sheep? All of these things, and particularly with the horse, and now we got another problem, to be honest with you. So over the summer, we found out that one of the burros that was captured out of Mojave tested positive for COVID. It had to put down, they had to quarantine Florence. So there was no horses, no burros whatsoever for 90 days?
60 to 90 days.
Yeah, I think it was 90 days. Now we've got an outbreak of equine herpes that was isolated over in Nevada. And the quarantine was brought at least once, we know, to Idaho. So now we've got a problem. Over in Mojave County now, we're actually asking the BLM to round up all the burros so they can be tested. By the way, there are over 4,000 estimated. And that herd management area is only allowed 497 or 490, something like that. So now you're seeing the whole problem of this whole vestige.
Here in Arizona, in the Heber Overguard, the last census was in 2017, and there were only 299 horses in that herd on 616,000 acres.
But my problem with it is they're also starving. We actually
They're
have
not
pictures of,
starving.
yes they are. I can tell you, we have pictures. We went and looked at it to see it.
I've
They
been
trampled,
photographing
hold on. They have trampled all the area. They're responsible for the New Mexico jumping mouse's terrain. They're principal at the ones tearing it down. So once again, am I uniform on this? Absolutely. So how do you feel about the beefalo up in the Grand Canyon?
I'm asking you about the
I-
wild horses. The
there's
cattle
perfect-
outnumber them 28 to 1 on the western public land.
I'm just telling you right now, take it up with the Center for Biological Diversity. I have no say. It's in the courts right now. And what it's gonna pit, I can tell you right now.
The Forest Service in Heber just issued a draft
Excuse me, we
plan.
have a question per person, there's not another question.
I've heard a lot lately about ballot harvesting.
Ballot harvesting?
The Ninth District Court overturned our law. California wants to be the poster child for ballot harvesting. Do we have a chance at a fair election?
Well, we gotta demand that. So one of the things that we did early this year is we actually brought the recorders from each of our counties and said, what did you see? What did you see problematic? Very interesting, we sat down with state legislators to tell them exactly that. For example, in Mojave County, all of a sudden votes were coming out. The recorder got up, went down and looked in the post office, and sure enough, one of the postal workers was putting them aside, not being mailed out. And you can go down to Yuma, where you got folks that live in Mexico that have post office boxes.
Yes, they do.
And they're getting ballots, collecting from the post office ballots. You also wonder why New York and California have driver's license for illegals. Because that's a form of ID at the poll. So what we have to do is this is a state and local issue, because that's where the votes are cast. We have to have poll workers, we have to ask our recorder, how is this happening, what's happening, why are they doing this? The second thing you have to do is that we found out that Maricopa County and Pima County have their own system. They're supposed to have all one system.
That's right.
They have their own software people. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that's probably-
So when you do software, a lot of this is done by the algorithms.
Right.
So if you're on the opposite side, you can get gerrymander that algorithm. So we have got to have a fair election. So this is being debated right now, back and forth. We the citizen have to volunteer, be part of the polling place. If you see something wrong, we ought to call it out.
They can contact,
Yeah.
poll watchers are being recruited right now. Go through either ACGOP or
Yeah.
your local recorder. If you have any questions, call me.
They're having training this Tuesday, Wednesday, and
And they're
Thursday.
not just poll workers, these are poll watchers
Yeah.
that watch the process.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you count the early ballots and you count some of those ballots that come in late, those are the kind that you gotta watch. That's where we lose a little integrity in our election, so.
And the other thing is, we need to get people registered to vote. So this isn't just a family thing. You gotta go beyond the family, your friends, your network, saying, listen, are you registered to vote? Are you registered, do you want socialism? This is something that we, the people, have to take back. That was the whole mantra of the Tea Party aspect, was getting back to governance by the people. And so we're gonna ask a lot of you, we're gonna ask a lot of ourselves as well. But every candidate, I don't care who, what office you're running for, you better go out there and tell people it's time to vote. It's time to register. You got to do it.
Congressman, to your left here.
Yes.
Hello, welcome.
Councilwoman, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. So such a pleasure to have you. Not sure if anybody asked this question or not, but it has to do with forest lands and
Yep.
the American Land Council.
Mhm.
Any news regarding if Arizona and all the western states finally get our forests back, so we can go ahead and take everything care of what we need, and also, again, it's taxes, it goes back to public, so please, thank you.
Well, one of the ideas in return to that was our bill called the HERD Act. And one of the problems there is that the chairman of my committee doesn't believe that those public lands should be returned. So what we're using it as is a way to pitch it to the people that we go around, whether it be Colorado, Alaska, Montana. We're building consensus behind that. And for those that don't know this, we mimicked a bill that a pretty accomplished senator actually did. He had a problem. And one of his big cities was walled off. It was surrounded by BLM. He couldn't grow that city. So what he did is he went back in the ledgers of all the bills that had passed into law and found this law that requires the BLM and Forest Service to inventory all their lands. Any lands that they cannot utilize, they have to put up for auction. Ooh. And that law requires that disposal, when they're sold, 50% goes to the state, 50% goes to the federal government. Now it's 52% go to the federal government because of the Ryan Murray budget and 48 to the state. So this gentleman generated almost $4 billion last decade, came to the state of Nevada. That was their part of the sales. The gentleman's name was Harry Reid. So what we did is we've actually moved it forward. If it's good enough for Harry, it's good enough for us. So we call it the HERD Act. And basically what it does is the 50% that comes back to the state, get rid of it, and it's 48. 15% goes to K-12 education. You think our education could use more dollars? Yep. 15% go to secondary education. How about Gila Community College? You think they could use some extra money? Mm-hmm. And then how about 10% for infrastructure in the location that it's been purchased? So if that land was sold from Gila County, all of that infrastructure money would come directly back to you. And 10% would go back to conservation to help out some of the ill-funded aspects of management of our forest. Now tag that with, we saw the problems with Forefront. Yeah, so we went crazy. We went crazy. I mean, Penny can tell you. They did not really care. I was hot. Once again, I don't want to be a victim. So the Forest Service now put out a different plan. It's got regions. So if you're competing for those, you can compete it as a single region. It was one contractor for all of it, but in each of the different regions, you have to do work every year. Now we got people that have anteed up. The bid process should be done end of February. I think it's the end of February. We don't know if it's going to make a big impact for this summer season, but we've asked them to expand their MOU capability to places like good stewardship contracts, as well as Coconino County. Right now, the only logs coming out of the state are in Coconino County. Liberal bastion, but we're scared to death that their city's going to get burned up. And they're right. They're right. Wait, go ahead.
One more, well, I'm not raising my hand, I'm just saying one more question.
Right here,
Okay.
this is the last
Okay.
question, right
But
here.
anyway, that's what we're having that conversation. And believe it or not, all the folks back east go, but you don't get the benefits? And we're like, no. And we have to beg you to get our PILT money, which is pennies on the dollar. They call that Western welfare. And after they come out here and seen it, they're like, oh, I guess I was wrong. Once again, another tribute to getting people out there to touch here and see the problem. Thanks, Councilwoman.
Well, I'm glad to end this with a little bit of humor, I think.
Okay.
We know how famously and successfully our president uses his Twitter account to communicate directly with us, and we thank God for that.
Mm-hmm.
But you, Congressman,
yes,
made internet Twitter history a few months ago with a series of tweets. Here's a headline. Arizona Republican Paul Gosar has shared a series of tweets, 23 in all, using the first letters to spell out that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Now, what I want to know is, if you could give us some background, how that came to be, whether you anticipated it would receive the attention it did, and finally, who killed Jeffrey Epstein?
Inquiring minds want to know. Okay, so let me tell you about what we do in the office. In our office, everybody is hired for their skill set. Everything is on the table. So as Tom will probably tell you, I'm more in the legislative office than in my office, because we bounce things back and forth. And the gentleman right back there has got a very creative mind, just like me. And so the idea was, I wonder if we use this Acronics to get some attention to the hearings. Well, it was one of the best days in our office, because everybody was, we were laughing, we were coming up with this, no, let's change that, let's change this to that. And we put it together, and off it went. It generated 33 million hits, just us. And then we got the disgraced congresswoman from California, Katie Hill, that said, oh my God, a Republican congressman is using an Acronics. How sad. We couldn't stop ourselves. So the answer back was, this is priceless, coming from a lady who single-handedly taught the world a new word, throuple. And what about that tattoo? Now, for anybody that doesn't know, Katie Hill has a Nazi Iron Cross on her inner left thigh. It's all over the internet. This is a lady that called everybody a Nazi and a racist. She knew exactly what I was after. She was silenced. She didn't respond one iota. And then this year, she actually came to the House floor for the State of the Union. The day before the State of the Union, I was walking by their cloakroom. They opened it, well, Omar was coming at me. She was frowning at me. She didn't want to look at me. She opens the door, there's Katie Hill. She sees my ugly mug and she goes, so I guess we did good. But here's the point to that whole thing. We lived outside the box. Isn't it interesting, to your point, we actually had young kids, millennials, Gen Zs, actually bloggers coming to our defense. How cool, a Republican congressman actually using an Acronics to get, I wasn't watching the impeachment hearings. Now I am. It was unbelievable what was happening. Sometimes you've got to communicate on their level. And that's where the wisdom of our office. I just have to tell you, you have a great office that works on your behalf. Yep. You look at Penny, she's everywhere. You know, she's the energizing bunny. Tom is everywhere, is a student as to the legal aspect and the intuition about how do we get from point A to point Z is unbelievable. Our scheming sessions when we go for dinner are amazing. It's fabulous. And everybody that we've hired, Rory, Will, to Leslie, all of them are top-notch. In fact, we had a big exodus. You know where the exodus where our members went to, our staff members? The Interior Department. They stole my senior advisor. He's now the senior advisor for the Secretary of Interior. They stole two of my communications directors. Both now are back with the Interior. One went on to the Vice President's office and went back to the Interior. She was Mr. Happy. But I guess my point is, it comes back to that point, is talk to kids in the way they want to be talked to. If we have a paper or white paper about what we stand for, kids aren't going to read this. But they'll watch that Twitter feed. They'll watch a video. I've said that over and over and over again. Know who your audience is. This is easy. It's fun. We're building back the family. We're taking back this country. And just imagine what is possible when you vote Republican, 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 Republican. Thank you.